Long ago in India, there was a king who ruled with great fairness. In his youth, he was often quick to anger, but over time, he became gentle and kind. Through his example and teachings, he instilled in his people the values of politeness and compassion for the suffering. He established hospitals for the sick, parks for both people and animals to rest, ordered the digging of wells so travelers and animals would not go thirsty, and planted fruit trees and medicinal plants along the roads. The king's first son had beautiful, gentle eyes like a certain bird, which earned him the nickname Bird Eyes. The king adored him, and his mother, the queen, was dearly loved as well. Unfortunately, the queen passed away early, but the prince remained beloved and trusted by his father. The prince's kindness, gentleness, and humility won the admiration and respect of the people. His wife was also gentle and always pleased him. After the queen's death, the king remarried a proud and cruel woman who bore him a son. She wished for her son to succeed the king instead of the prince and harbored a deep hatred for her stepson. When the king fell seriously ill and the doctors were unable to cure him, the new queen found a remedy. In gratitude, the king offered to grant her a wish, and she asked for her son to be made the heir. The king was troubled, as he had promised his late wife that only the prince would succeed him. He said, "I can give up the throne, but not break my promise." Sensing an opportunity, the queen requested to hold the king's seal of authority for a single day. The king agreed, unaware of her intentions. There was a city in the kingdom that had risen in rebellion against the king's officials. The queen, having secretly incited the rebellion, gave money to the officials to impose heavy taxes on the people, then encouraged the people to revolt. She suggested sending the prince to quell the unrest, claiming that only he could restore peace without violence. The next morning, the city's representatives petitioned the king to send the prince. The queen, holding the king's seal, approved their request. The king, suspecting the queen's intentions, was anxious. How dangerous it is to send the prince to a rebellious city, he thought. The queen feigned offense, returned the seal, and pretended to be hurt by the king's suspicions. Feeling bound by his promise, the king did not take back the seal, and the prince insisted on going despite the danger. He refused to take a protective army, believing that swift action was necessary to prevent bloodshed. Seeing a forest of spears and hearing the clamor of war will not calm the people's hearts, he said. The prince departed on his horse, unaware that a loyal servant of the queen followed him with a sealed decree from the king. Riding swiftly, the prince passed villages, mountains, fields and forests, with people eagerly awaiting his arrival. They prepared to welcome him with flowers and gifts, praising him for his fairness. The prince listened to their grievances and promised to ease their burdens, earning their loyalty and admiration. He reformed the tax system and appointed just officials, restoring peace to the city. Suddenly, the loyal servant arrived with a decree ordering the prince's eyes to be gouged out, branding him an enemy of the king and a disgrace to the royal family. The officials were horrified, but felt compelled to obey the decree. They presented it to the prince, who, recognizing the king's seal, accepted his fate. The people, learning of the decree, gathered in sorrow, but no one dared to defy it. A gruesome figure stepped forward to carry out the punishment, heating a metal rod to burn the prince's eyes. The prince endured the agony calmly, his suffering moving the crowd to tears. Once blinded, he urged the people to leave him and follow the decree's command not to assist or mention him. The prince collapsed in the heat, but eventually found shade. Hearing a familiar sound, he recognized his loyal horse and urged it to leave him as well. The horse circled him, then departed alone down the path they had once traveled together. As the sun set, a kind old woman approached, offering water and tending to his wounds. She helped him leave the city, where he awaited an uncertain fate. Meanwhile, the city's representatives met with the king, praising the prince's fairness and integrity. The prince's wife, relieved by these reports, was still worried. Days later, seeing the prince's horse return alone, she fainted, overcome with fear. Resolute, she disguised herself as a commoner and set out to find her husband. For days she wandered, asking everyone she met if they had seen the prince. One morning, a farmer told her of a blind man resembling a prince he had seen in the forest. She rushed to the spot and found her husband, now sightless and alone. Overcome with emotion, she wept and embraced him. Recognizing her voice, the prince was overjoyed despite his suffering. Together, they made their way back to the palace. The king, worried since learning of the horse's return and the princess's departure, had sent envoys to inquire about the prince. The city's people, fearing retribution, misled the envoys, claiming the prince had returned to the capital. The envoys, suspecting foul play but finding no evidence, reported back to the king. Finally, the couple reached the palace, dressed in rags. Initially turned away by the guards, they were eventually allowed to shelter in a stable. The next day, the king heard familiar singing from the stable. Recognizing his son's voice, he had the couple brought before him. Despite their tattered appearance, he recognized them and wept with joy. Upon learning the truth, the king was enraged, demanding to know who had used his seal to commit such an atrocity. The prince remained silent, but his wife revealed the queen's involvement. The king, long suspicious, was now certain of her guilt and summoned her. The queen, tormented by guilt and fear, knew her crimes had been exposed. She confessed silently, her downcast eyes betraying her remorse. The king, furious, ordered her severe punishment. The prince, however, pleaded for mercy, attributing his suffering to the karma of his past life. He recounted a story of a hunter who had once blinded 50 deer, believing it was his own past misdeeds that led to his current fate. To prove his sincerity, he prayed for his sight to be restored, which it miraculously was. Moved by the prince's words, the king pardoned the queen, but banished her to a secluded place for penance. The kingdom was restored to peace, and the prince was officially named heir, with his wife as the future queen. The prince, known for his wisdom and compassion, would later be reborn as the Buddha.